Simulated gambling is games that look and feel just like gambling, but there isn't the ability to bet, win or lose money. There's some key concerns around simulated gambling or gambling-like games. These games can make people feel that gambling really is just like a normal game and really doesn't involve any kind of harm, where we know that gambling can actually result in quite severe harms. In addition, these types of games actually allow people to experience the rewards of winning without feeling the pains of losses, and that can set up an illusion for people that they may actually have more chance of winning and that their skills from games can translate over to gambling. And when you're thinking about games like slot machine gambling, there is no skill base in these games, so it can really set up a belief in people that they're going to be more successful with these games, with gambling, when they transfer over from games, than they will in fact be. The research in terms of simulated gambling or gambling-like games is really very much in its infancy, but what we do know already is that around 20% of people who play these types of games will actually transfer over to gambling, so we'll move from the games over to gambling. And some of the reasons they'll do this is to win money, and because they feel that they've been able to practice with the games and now are ready to try out gambling. And one of the other things we know about from the research is that people who transfer over from the games to gambling are more likely to have gambling problems. We don't know as yet whether that means that the games are leading to people to gambling and possibly into gambling problems, or whether it's just that people who are heavily into gambling and may have gambling problems also like these type of games. There's lots of things we're still yet to know about gambling-like games or simulated gambling. We really don't know that much as yet about how it might normalise gambling for people who are playing those games, when it might lead to particularly risky play and risky gambling. And we still don't know a lot about the pathways between the games and gambling. We know that some people move from the games over to gambling, and for some other people they move from gambling back into games. And so there may actually be some protective features around some of these gambling-like games, but we really don't know that much about those sort of really why people might play those games and when it becomes risky for them. There's lots of reasons people play simulated gambling games or gambling-like games. A lot of the motivations are actually quite similar to the motivations for gambling. So people do it as a form of entertainment because they think it's fun, it's exciting, it can be a challenge for them. There's also, for some people, they'll find it relieves boredom or actually allows them to escape from thinking about some of their problems. These last two are some of the motivations that we know are associated with risky gambling, and so potentially could be a problem if people shift from games over to gambling. We really don't know much about who's most at risk from playing these types of games. We know that there's a proportion of people who move from the games over to gambling, and we know that people who are experiencing problems with their gambling are more likely to be playing these games. But we don't as yet know whether one is causing the other, and we really don't know much at all about who might be most at risk and why they might be most at risk in terms of potential gambling issues from playing these games. There's very little regulation that's actually occurring around gambling-like games, and what it does exist is really quite inconsistent and in many ways inadequate. There's very little information to inform parents or players of games as to the potential risks involved in these games or the likelihood if they move across from games to gambling, and the regulations that are in place are inconsistent across the different platforms and different types of games that are being played.